Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So we're going to cover a subject today that I think is sorely needed. And that subject is how to think critically about political conversations or in political conversations. Now, this is agnostic. I am not pushing any political view. You should decide what you think is right, what you believe in, and what you support. I'm not trying to sway you one way or another. I'm agnostic as it relates to that. What I would like to see people do is use facts and reasoning instead of just emotions when they consider subjects. So that's what we're going to try to teach. That's what we're going to get into. And that's what the episode is all about. So let's just jump into the episode here. Now, like we talked about, most people don't think about politics. They feel politics. And there's nothing wrong with emotions. I'm not saying be a robot. I'm not saying don't have feelings. I'm saying those should not override real life facts and real life situations. When emotions lead, your logic goes out the window. And the result of that, we see it every day. It's outrage, it's division, and it's conversations that go nowhere. It's people yelling at each other. It's people not listening to each other. We're not going to be able to solve any of our problems if we continue to do that. And we're going to build that skill today. I don't see a lot of people out there teaching it. I don't see a lot of people out there encouraging it. I see a lot of name calling. I see a lot of finger pointing. I see a lot of whataboutism, and that's not going to get us anywhere. We need to learn to override our emotional reactions and think clearly and logically and independently about political issues. It's okay to be a Republican that supports abortion. It's okay to be a Democrat that supports the Second Amendment. And I'm just using examples. I'm not trying to say you should or should not do those things. Typically, Republicans are pro-life. Typically, Democrats do not support fully the Second Amendment. They want gun laws, some more gun laws than Republicans do. All I'm trying to say, not at all about politics. So, freedom will start with you in your mind and how you think about things, not when you vote. So you got to think through things if you want your voice to be heard in the way you want it heard to support the things that are important to you. So that's it. That's what we're doing. So we're going to give you tips. Let's jump into the tips right now. The first thing you have to do is actually notice it when emotion hijacks your brain. And there's a lot of neuroscience behind this, and that shows that when your emotional centers of the brain, like the amygdala, like we talk about a lot on this channel, strongly activate, activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is where logic and reasoning happens, decreases. So emotions heighten, logic shrinks. That's not a place we want to be. It's called the amygdala hijack. Goldman in 1995 coined that phrase. So we need to avoid that. We need to notice it when it's happening. In politics, emotionally charged language and or situations literally reduces reasoning capacity in real time. We have to learn to recognize that when it happens. So, for example, a headline says, "Policy X will destroy your future." Before you even read the details of that article or that online, whatever, it's just, you see that headline somewhere. Your brain reacts emotionally, and now you're primed to accept or reject information based on how you feel, not on facts. And we need to get away from that. So the action step here is when you feel that emotional reaction happen to you, just stop, take a breath, and then label the emotion that you're feeling. Are you angry? Are you scared? Are you confused? What is the emotion that you're feeling? Are you irritated? I feel pissed, whatever. Just label it. It has been shown that if you can label it, it will reduce the reaction of your amygdala, and then you can work through things in your logical centers of your brain. So here's one way to think about it. If you feel really strongly about something, you're probably not thinking clearly about it, regardless of what that opinion or that position is. If you feel so strongly that you can't listen to or try to understand people who feel differently, then you're probably not thinking clearly about that subject, regardless of the subject. And that's not a good place for us to be as people. Okay. Number 2, we have to learn to separate facts from narratives. Studies on motivated reasoning show that people unconsciously select information that supports pre-existing beliefs. That's from a Kunda study in 1990. Humans are storytellers, and we accept narratives faster than we accept data or facts. So a real world example of this would be when two people watch the same economic report or get the same economic information. One hears growth is strong, the other hears inequality is rising. Same data, different filters. I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I'm saying they hear what they want to hear. It's called confirmation bias, and we have to fight against confirmation bias. We have to separate facts from narratives so we can think about things in an intelligent way. So when we hear a political claim, we need to ask ourselves, what are the actual facts or numbers? What part is interpretation or framing? And what facts or numbers are not being communicated that may make me think differently? Write those things down separately if you need to. But the way you want to think about it is data is reality, narrative is opinion. And again, there's nothing wrong with opinions. There's nothing wrong with emotions. But you should have all of the facts and information available to you so you can figure out how you want to think about particular subjects. And again, I'm not pushing anyone to think a particular way. This is not a partisan or political argument. This is simply about the thought process. We want to focus on the thought process. All right, tip number 3, steel man the other side. And this is interesting because I've actually done this for a long time, but I never heard this term until my wife used it this week. And I found it very interesting that this is something I was doing, but I didn't know the name of it. And she did know the name of it. So I learned that from her. Research in cognitive psychology shows people become more accurate thinkers when they practice perspective taking and argument reconstruction. This reduces confirmation bias and increases intellectual humility. So what does steelman mean? So real world example, instead of saying those idiots who I don't agree with, who want to ruin everything, instead think about it this way. If I believed their goal was X, how would this policy make sense? If I knew that they wanted to X, how would this policy make sense instead of me calling them a name and completely discounting their point of view, which, by the way, in many instances is valid. More than one thing can be true at the same time. Your strongly held belief can be true, but it could have negative consequences that you're not considering or you're not putting an appropriate amount of thought into. You don't have to agree. The whole point here is to understand how the other side thinks, understand how the other side feels, and consider those thoughts and feelings when you're thinking about how to respond and when you're thinking about how to interact with people. So before the action step here is before we criticize a political position, we want to state the strongest version of the opposing argument out loud or in writing. Okay? Like, I'm not saying validate it. I'm saying understand it and understand why they think and feel the way they think and feel. If you can't state that fairly, you don't understand their argument yet, and you need to do more work. Part of your job as a good critical thinker is to fully understand, comprehend, and at least acknowledge the other side's thoughts and feelings. I'm not saying you have to validate them. I'm not saying you have to agree with them, but they're not necessarily wrong for thinking the way that they think or feel. Some things are cut and dried, but most things in politics are not. There's nuance to them, and it's important to understand the nuance. And well, here's another way to think about it. You can't win a debate on a subject if you don't understand fully the subject. And if you don't understand the other side's argument, then you don't understand the subject fully. And you have a responsibility to understand that. Okay? Tip number 4 here is, what would change my mind? Ask yourself that question. What would change my mind on this subject? So the science behind this, there's lots of studies of belief rigidity that show that people who predefine disconfirming evidence become dramatically more open-minded and accurate thinkers. So that's a long-winded way of saying, instead of just clinging to your beliefs, think what would make me think differently about this? What could make me change my beliefs about this? Most people never ask this question. So their beliefs become their identity, and that makes it really hard for them to think about things in a logical, reasonable way. And you can't have your identity tied up in politics. It's not a good place to be. It's going to lead you down a bad path. It doesn't matter what the identity is. There's no good path there at all. We need reason, we need logic, we need facts. And that's what we want to base our policies and our decisions on. Instead of just saying, I know this policy is bad, ask yourself, what evidence would convince me I'm wrong? I'll share one thing, like this capitalism and socialism. I've yet to see socialism work anywhere. So I would like the people that support or advocate for socialism to show me an example of where it worked. Not hypothetical, not in a classroom, but socialism has been tried in a lot of countries. I've yet to see it work in any country. Capitalism's got a lot of problems. It ain't perfect. But I have seen capitalism lead to more good outcomes than any other economic system. And so I'm open, wide open to the conversation. I'm wide open to evidence. I just can't find it. So that would make me reconsider, change my mind. If you could point to a place where socialism has worked, that's real data that I need to consider and think, hey, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong. But that type of thought process is the thought process you want to use, not I know what's right. You're an idiot if you disagree with me. That's not a place to be. Okay. So ask yourself, what evidence would convince me I'm wrong? And if the answer to that is nothing, you're not thinking. You're feeling, you're working off your emotions, and you've allowed those emotions to define your identity on this position. That is not a good place to be as a critical thinker, regardless of the position. Okay. So our action step here is for you to pick one strong political belief that you do hold and write in one sentence, I would reconsider this belief if I saw X, Y, or Z. What evidence, what facts, what data could make you reconsider that position? So our statement on this, if you have a belief that can't be questioned, it's not a belief. It's actually a cage or a prison. You're trapped by your thinking on this subject. You got to get out of that prison and think about it from a holistic perspective. Okay, and now our last tip here is just to slow down the conversation. We don't have to have rapid fire exchanges with people for them to be effective. In fact, they're probably much more effective when we slow them down, we speak in a reasonable tone, we don't let things get emotional, devolve into ad hominem attacks. Fast emotional responses use intuitive processing. Slow responses activate analytical reasoning. So there's a psychologist named Daniel Kahneman who calls them System 1, which is fast, and System 2, which is slow, thinking. Political media is designed to keep you in System 1. You need to fight that and get to System 2. Slow things down, think about them critically, think about them logically, get as many facts as you can, regardless of whether those facts agree with your currently held belief or opinion or not. All right? Cable news panels, they're terrible. They shout over each other all the time, and they do it for a reason. The noise disables your ability to reflect on what they're saying. They want to brainwash you to think whatever their position is the right one. And it's across the political spectrum. It's completely apolitical. Anyone in any party, any group in any party partakes in this behavior. It's not a good place for us to be. So our action steps here in political discussions, we need to just pause for 5 seconds before responding. Just wait. Don't say anything. Lower your speaking speed by 10%. Say your words slower. Slow the cadence of your speech. And ask at least one clarifying question before you give your view. All right? That will help you slow things down. It'll help you think, because you've got to think about things to ask questions. And remember this, think about it this way. The calmest mind in the room is the most powerful mind in the room. So if you don't get triggered and allow your emotions to take over, you are in the catbird seat as it relates to any discussion that you're a part of. All right? So we're going to give you a little 7-day challenge here to work on your critical thinking. And this doesn't have to just apply to politics. This can apply to anything emotional, by the way. So for the next 7 days, when consuming political, controversial content, pause and label the emotion that you feel right off the bat. You're going to feel an emotion, stop and just label it. Number 2, separate the fact from the narrative at least once a day. Stop and say, okay, I just heard this. What are the facts behind that narrative? Steel man one opposing view. Remember, steel man is, how do I make their argument for them? How do I think like them and think about the outcome they want to achieve the outcome that the opposition wants, or the people that think differently than I think want? Ask yourself, What would change my mind about this subject? What data or evidence or occurrence would change my mind on this subject? And then work on slowing down all of our conversations so that they're useful and meaningful. We're not going to make this switch all at once. It's small reps. Those small reps will lead to massive, massive positive change long term. You may not change any of your beliefs. You may change all of your beliefs. Not the point of what we're trying to accomplish here. All we're trying to accomplish here is to give you tools to think critically when you find yourself in emotionally charged situations. This works in politics. It works in relationships. It works in your professional life. These things will work everywhere. And if you're a good critical thinker, you are so far ahead of most people, it's a huge advantage to carry with you through life. Remember, you can't control politics. You can't control controversial subjects, but you can control how well your mind works when you're engaged in those situations. You'll feel so much better if you practice these tips. That's all we're trying to get people to do. So, all right, guys, that's the episode. So James puts it up over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. Links to our social media accounts are available there. We publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to on our website. And make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe to our podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. We're going to keep doing interviews. We've got live streams coming up. We've got episodes like this that give you real world skills to help you think critically and build the life that you want. It's all good stuff. You don't want to miss any of it. So make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you catch our next episode. We'll see you there.